Hello guys. Hope the previous module on Freud's personality theory is well realized by you. This module is also going to deal with personality theory, but at two different angles of it. The first part will discuss the Erikson's psychosocial theory of personality, and the following part will deal with the extension of Freud's theory with exclusive focus on defense mechanisms. At the end of this module, you will be able to sketch out the 8 stages of Erikson's psychosocial development theory, realize the educational implications of psychosocial theory, comprehend the ego defense mechanism adopted by man to resolve the conflict between id and superego. Now, let us venture into the Erikson's theory of psychosocial development. Erik Erikson articulated a psychosocial theory identifying infancy to old age. He also postulated certain challenges to be mastered by every person at every stage. The successful confrontation and skillful mastery of the challenges confirms a healthy and well-adjusted adult. Though Erikson expanded Freud's psychosexual theory, he made it very clear that ego helps in attaining positive attitudes, skills, and ideas at every stage of development. Unlike Freud's stages, Erikson's theory focused on the whole of the lifespan of human beings, that is, up to death. His major area of interest in proposing this theory and its related researches thereafter was on how to help the future generation with our leftover legacy or personal footprint. The personal footprint indicated by Erikson refers to the inner voice of a person questioning himself or herself on what kind of person was I here on earth? Was I compassionate? Did I help the human race to become better morally and ethically? Now guys, are you questioning yourself? Hope you find better answers. As already said, Erikson's theory focused much on the personal footprint with legacy and generativity as major concern. But before articulating his theory, Erikson realized certain ideas and facts of life of every human being. The first one is that every personality trait of a human being comes in opposites, and also some of these traits are learned and others are inborn. For example, optimistic or pessimistic, independent or dependent, aggressive or passive, and so on. The second fact is that the world gets bigger as the person goes along and as when he or she is exposed to it. The third one is failure is cumulative. But what is it? To understand the cumulative nature of failure, answer these two questions with consideration to orphaned children. Do orphaned children find it difficult to negotiate problems in their later stages when compared to children brought up in a caring and better environment? The second question is, do you think the deficits or deprivation faced by these children in their early stages could be overcome all of a sudden as if the human spirit gets ignited? If your answer for the first question is true and the second one is false, then of course you have got this philosophy of life right. As indicated earlier, Erikson had identified 8 stages through which a person passes from infancy to late adulthood. At every stage, a person is said to confront a conflict, crisis, or challenge, and thereby questions himself or herself. Then, by adopting certain virtues and establishing better relationship with significant others, they try to resolve the crisis or master the challenge and find a realistic solution to that question. Before looking into the actual theory, it is imperative to comprehend the similarities and differences of Erikson's theory with that of Freud. The first 4 stages of Erikson correspond to the first 4 stages of Freud's psychosexual development. The 5th stage of adolescence is also seen as parallel to the genital stage of Freud. However, the emphasis of Erikson's theory is not on the sex modes, but on the ego qualities of every stage. One major point that differentiates the psychosexual theory with that of the psychosocial theory is that Erikson did not stop at adolescence, but extended till old age, because of his belief that the development continues throughout life. One important aspect to be realized is that the 8 life stages of Erikson are viewed as a life cycle. In other words, the end of one generation serves as the beginning of the next, and the following section would explain these 8 stages, its corresponding conflict or crisis or challenge to be resolved. Now on to the first stage. The psychological crisis at the first stage is trust versus mistrust. It spans from birth to 2 years. And the experiential question that comes to the mind is, can I trust the world? And they adopt the virtue hope. At this stage, the infant's basic needs are being met by the parents, and the infant in turn depends on them, particularly mother, for sustenance and comfort. Hence, the first trust of a child is with the parent or the primary caregiver. When the infant is exposed to needed warmth and affection, the infant views the world as trustworthy and realizes that even others in this world are dependable and reliable. But an insecure environment instills a sense of mistrust in them and looks at others as undependable and unreliable. This stage of Erikson cautions the parents to create a secured environment in a way that the child feels safe, comfortable, and well cared. Now on to the second stage, where the psychological crisis is autonomy versus shame and doubt. The age span at this stage is 2 to 4 years. The question in mind is it okay to be me? And they solve this conflict through the virtue will. This is a period where the child is toilet trained and has a control over eliminative functions. Also, their increased motor abilities facilitate them to explore the surrounding environment. With these developments, they become capable of satisfying some of their own needs by feeding, grooming themselves, and use bathroom at ease. If the parent or caregiver encourages this self-sufficient behavior without restrictions, then the toddler develops a sense of ability to solve some of their problems by themselves. That is, they develop a sense of autonomy. If the parent or caregiver demand too much or too soon, or if at all they don't give them enough opportunities to carry out their capable task, the children would develop a doubt in their capability and in turn feels shameful for not performing it. Hence, parents or caregivers' foremost duty at this stage is to provide sensible options without forcing the toddler to perform certain activities, which in turn would promote the sense of independence among them. The third stage comes with the psychological crisis, initiative versus guilt. It spans from the 4th year to the 5th year of the child. Now the child has got a question in its mind, is it okay for me to do, move, and act in the way I think? The virtue adopted is purpose. In the process of learning to master the world, the child learns certain skills and principles. They are absorbed to do things with a purpose. The autonomy created in the previous stage helps in instigating initiatives to complete an action. But when the initiative does not work out or yield the expected result, a new confusing emotion sets in called as guilt. However, with these new initiatives, the child develops negative behavior as an outcome of not being able to achieve a desired result of the initiative. So, they are found to engage in certain behaviors that seem to be aggressive, like throwing objects, hitting, yelling, throwing temper tantrums, etc. When the parents or caregiver or the preschool teacher at this stage provide enough encouragement and support to the children in making their initiatives a realistic and appropriate one, the preschooler develops the independence in taking initiatives. On the other hand, when their initiatives or independent activities are discouraged and told that they are silly things to do, the child develops guilt over their personal needs or desires. Hence, the parents or caretakers or the preschool teacher at this stage should allow the child to explore their surrounding by setting a limit and support the decisions made by the child in doing it. Then comes the fourth stage of Erikson with the psychological crisis, industry versus inferiority. The age span is 5 to 12 years, and the question in mind for these stage children are, can I contribute to the world of people and things? And they fight in this stage with the virtue of competence. As children become more aware of themselves, they tend to be responsible, good, and wanted to do things right. At this age, the children exhibit their eagerness to learn and accomplish complex skills in the arena of 3 R's. Also, self-confidence and moral values get initiated at the beginning of this stage. These enhanced skills in turn make the children crave for praises and encouragement for everything they do. They also start to recognize their special talent and discover their interest. If the children are supported and encouraged in performing their desired task, and then praises for accomplishing it, even when minimal, they are sure to develop perseverance to complete the task chosen and try to put work before pleasure. This trait is coined by Erikson as industry. Whereas, when the children are ridiculed or not supported while performing a task of their desire, or when punished for developing a feeling of inferiority about their own abilities and thereby lack self-motivation and suffer from low self-esteem. Hence, parents or the teachers at this stage should provide positive social interactions and encouraging affirmations so that the child believes in himself or herself and in his or her ability. Then on to the fifth stage. The psychological crisis identified was identity versus role confusion. It spans between 13 to their 19th year, and the question in mind for these adolescents are, who am I and what can I be? And they adopt the virtue fidelity. This stage marks a period of adolescence, a bridge between childhood and adulthood, where the adolescent's main concern is on how they appear to others. Also, while analyzing their roles to be played as an adult, they are subjected to role confusion, that is, mixed ideas and feelings of how do they fit into the society. Erikson has coined a new word, identity crisis, specific to this period, as a result of an attempt to reconcile between who am I and what is society expecting me to do. This reconciliation leads to many conflicts among adolescents. If the society gives him enough space to discover himself and provide opportunities to experiment, then the adolescent could balance this reconciliation and establish an identity of his or her own. However, if the society insists too much on what it expects, the adolescent is forced to foreclose his experimentation and just tries to follow the society words but lose way somewhere in his or her life. Hence, the society as a whole should provide opportunities for every adolescent to explore various roles, set goals, so that he or she should discover his or her adult selves in them. Though Erikson's theory talks of 8 stages, let us confine ourselves only to the first 5 stages, as already seen, that covers a lifespan till adolescence, because the paper focuses on children and their development. After realizing Erikson's assumption of the first 5 stages, you as a prospective teacher and even as a prospective parent should strive to create comfortable and encouraging environment for children, where the child could learn, explore new things and build a stable, pure relationship. But how to create it? You as an early childhood trainer could do it by incorporating certain classroom rules or home rules to be discussed right now. The first rule is, allow the children to take charge of their learning process. Do not dictate them to do the activities that you want. Do not expect them to complete an activity within a stipulated time. By doing this, the child could choose their areas of interest and master it. The second rule is, after identifying their interest, give them more and more activities in that particular area, or else create projects for them to complete. Third rule is, always make a point to appreciate and praise the effort put in by the child, though not worthy. Next rule is, do provide continuous feedback to keep them abreast. The last rule is, never criticize children in front of others. Take them to a separate room and talk about their wrong behavior. Give them other positive choices for that behavior and give them freedom to pick one choice from it. By following these rules, a teacher gives a hope so that the child gains a sense of trust with people around him. This hope of trust develops a will in them to carry out an activity to take choice, that's autonomy, which later encourages them to take initiative. When these initiatives are supported and showed better way to accomplish it, the child starts taking initiative with a purpose and develops self-confidence and feels satisfied for their accomplishment.
Start.
As already told, in the second part of the module, we are about to comprehend the concept and types of defense mechanisms. But before getting into it, let us recapitulate the subsection of the previous module on conflict between id, ego, and superego. The ego is always trying to balance the id and superego in order to maintain a healthy state of consciousness and to restore them to reality. However, before the ego steps in to be the referee, much anxiety and stress results. In order to overcome this situation, the ego defends itself by using defense mechanisms, thereby protecting the individual from anxiety that distorts reality. Also, the ego's defense mechanisms prevent the dangerous unconscious thoughts to enter into the conscious domain. These mechanisms often appear unconsciously with a key intention of distorting or falsifying reality. Once the reality gets falsified or distorted, the person's perception towards the situation changes and thereby anxiety decreases. Though Sigmund Freud observed a number of defense mechanisms, it is his daughter Anna Freud who elaborated on those defenses. The following section will provide you the existence of 10 major defense mechanisms with appropriate example. This section is to understand how human beings in general and children in particular use their ego as a referee in the process of restoring their thoughts and behavior into reality. The first is denial. Denial is a mechanism by which a person believes certain true facts are actually false. Here the external events are just blocked from awareness. Have you seen people who smoke? Most of them think that they won't get sick from smoking because they are in denial. In the attempt to resolve the conflict, the ego gives up. You would have seen people denying a physician's diagnosis of a disease as correct and seeking a second opinion. This is nothing but denial. Other examples are people fainting at a threatening situation, denying the death of a loved one, etc. The second defense mechanism is displacement. Displacement is a redirection of an impulse towards a substitute or less threatening target. The conflict between ego and superego sometimes forces a person to accept superego while redirecting his impulse or drive towards a less threatening substitute target. Have you ever slammed the door instead of hitting a person? If yes, you had exhibited the defense mechanism, displacement. One more example is that a person, after a heated argument with his boss, may go home, yell at his wife, kick the dog, beat up a family member, or even engage in cross burnings. The third defense mechanism is intellectualization. The process by which a person focuses on the intellectual aspects and avoids expressing unacceptable emotions is called intellectualization. Actually speaking, this defense mechanism helps a person to shape up his personality in a better way. When asked to write your positive qualities, don't you attribute exaggerated positive traits to yourself? This is nothing but intellectualization. By attributing exaggerated positive traits, you gain confidence or self-esteem in yourself. One more example of intellectualization is focusing on the details of funeral against expressing sadness or grief towards the death of a loved one. The fourth defense mechanism is projection, which is also called as displacement outward. It is almost the complete opposite of turning against a self or placing your own unacceptable impulse, feelings, or drives onto someone else. It increases the tendency to see one's own fault in others. Putting in simple words, it is, as per the popular saying, how you perceive yourself is how you perceive others. For example, a person who is self-centered and could focus only on his or her intentions and desires thinks that the next person is also self-centered and will not render help to others. The fifth defense mechanism is rationalization. It is a type of defense mechanism wherein logical or rational reasons are supplied instead of the real reason. A person applying this mechanism makes excuses as an effort to make it seem the unacceptable behavior exhibited is okay for certain rational reasons. You would have often heard adolescents giving rational reasons for falling in love, as because their parents do not show love on them. Another example to explain this mechanism is that a student who cheats on a text may say, I only copied few questions and wrote others on my own. The next is reaction formation. It is otherwise called as believing the opposite. This happens because a true belief would have caused anxiety in them, and hence the person tries to change that unacceptable impulse or drive or belief into its opposite. A very simple example for this mechanism is your own statements given during your adolescent period. Boys in adolescent age, you would have told the girls are disgusting. At the same time, the girls would have told with equal vigor how gross boys are. But we adults will know what your true feelings are. The seventh defense mechanism is regression. It is going back to a previous stage of development when faced with a stressful or threatening situation. This is the reason why certain times your behavior becomes more childish or primitive. You very well know that temper tantrums are often exhibited by a preschool child, but you at any stage of life might show the same behavior when you don't see things getting your way. The eighth is repression. It's a defense mechanism wherein you try to push your uncomfortable thoughts out of consciousness. Here, the ego tries to push your bad or painful memories underneath the surface of the lake. It is also referred as motivated forgetting, so that you will not be able to recall threatening situation, person, or event. For example, by effort, you may completely forget a tragic family accident that had happened in your childhood because of recalling the trauma or anxiety you underwent. The person holds in their urges just like a tea kettle holding in steam. But care should be taken as it would burst at any point of time. The next is introjection. It is also called identification. It involves taking someone else's personality characteristics into your own, as that process helps you to solve some of your own emotional difficulty. For example, a child who is left alone most of its time takes up this defense mechanism by identifying his or her mother's characteristics and introjecting into himself or herself by acting as mom in order to forget his or her fears. The last defense mechanism is sublimation. It's a most acceptable process of defense mechanisms wherein you try to redirect your wrong or unacceptable urges or drives into a society acceptable and even in a productive form. For a person to be aggressive, an easy way of channelizing his impulse is by directing his energy into playing sports, thereby sublimation had occurred. This synoptic presentation of the major defense mechanisms would have thrown light on how a personality of a man changes from time to time. But how do these mechanisms help us to deal with children, as the focus of this paper is on early childhood period? As already indicated, id is present from birth. Ego develops a little later, followed by superego. Hence, children also exhibit these defense mechanisms, though not at an aggressive level. So, as a prospective teacher or as a prospective parent, you should be in a position to understand that a behavior exhibited by a child may be due to the ego's defense mechanisms. So, realize its root, encourage and support them to be transparent, and channelize their feelings or desires for a better outcome. To conclude, let us recapitulate the whole module in a nutshell. Erikson's psychosocial theory, though lacks some academic credentials, is the idea that the positive way of resolving a crisis in a particular stage facilitates the transition and strength for crisis resolving in the next stage should be realized. Empirical researchers had also proved that the self-esteem and contentment improves with every positive resolution of challenge faced at every stage. Hence, Erikson's theory is found to be valid, original, and significant. However, it is in the hands of the teacher and parent of every child in the way they interpret the theory in the classroom setting and in the home environment, respectively, in nurturing a human being with a better personality. And the subsequent section of this module dealt with the extension of Freud's psychoanalytic theory, that's a defense mechanism, which had given you a glimpse of the nature and role of ego in resolving the conflict between id and superego. This section also cautions the teachers to provide a supportive and encouraging environment for children to develop them into a better person accepted in the society. With this, it's Arokya Maraicelvi signing off for today.